welcome to the study. It's the end of November, perhaps the very last day, depending on how quickly I can get this video out to you. So, despite it being so late in the month, if not on to the next month, hopefully, let's do our Study November Almanac. So I've got lots of interesting things for you in November's Almanac. We'll be looking at maps, trees and nature as normal, as usual. A little drawing and painting for our almanac disc. And, of course, history, legends, stories, and magic. So, let's get started. As the last blaze of golden leaves fall from the branches of the trees outside, and already in the early afternoon, the golden time has begun when the sun goes down in a blaze of pink and orange over the countryside that is preparing for sleep. All of the creatures in activity, slow, readying themselves for the long, dark, cold months ahead. When we all recede into the inside, we cross the space from activity and life into dormancy and sleep. Resting and recovering so that when spring does come, we can rise up to meet it, ready, energetic, hopeful. These months, we gather our friends, our family, our loved ones around us, and we tell stories, we talk, be those friends and loved ones, people, be they animals, books, spirits. We are now in a smaller space, physically, but our imagination and that beautiful world of the intellect where the spirits can ramble, that space is now expanded. What can we see as we look from our cozy spot outwardly? Outward from inward we look, and with the sun setting much sooner, we have longer periods of darkness every day as we hurtle towards the winter solstice. This means that we can view more stars and planets in our night sky. With Pegasus and the rest of the Perseus-Andromeda legend exposed and on show in the sky now, it is the season of myths and fantasy. Cepheus and Cassiopeia float above, awaiting the arrival of the hero Perseus on Pegasus, the winged horse, bearing the head of Medusa that will be used to turn Cetus the sea monster into stone and save the princess Andromeda. The great bear Ursa Major has settled in the north, and we can watch for Orion to ascend in the coming northern winter. We also, this season, enjoy the giants of our solar system in the dark winter skies. Saturn is placed for easy observation, and Jupiter heads towards opposition in January. Both of these can be seen with the naked eye. Farther afield, Uranus the magician comes to opposition below the Pleiades, the ancient source of legend, and we shall have a little story about them in a moment. Neptune, the serene blue planet, is visible with a telescope about 4 degrees northwest of Saturn. Of our small bright neighbors, Venus drops down to the southeast horizon, encountering Mercury coming the other way. In the south, after sunset, we can see the moon aligned with Jupiter, Saturn, and Venus. Venus, our brightest star, as it were, is closest to the horizon and sets within an hour of the sun. But the gas giants remain visible for a further 3 hours after dark, well before supper time. Jupiter has become prominent, dominating the late evening sky, rising in the east shortly after 7:15 p.m. and positioned just below the main outline of Gemini. After remaining nearly stationary against the stellar background for the past few months, Jupiter has now begun its retrograde motion westward. Saturn is now 33 degrees above the horizon, a few degrees shy of the celestial equator, which it finally crosses in the new year. This is a ring plane crossing year, so Saturn's rings appear shallow. However, this makes it easier to spot some of Saturn's moons that would otherwise be difficult to see. Dione, Rhea, and Tethys can all be spotted with a telescope. Titan, by far Saturn's largest moon, is harder to see, as it has been in several transits and occultations with Saturn. For our constellation, the Pleiades, there's a story I shall read to you from Leah Leindertz's Seasonal Guide to 2025. And I will put the Pleiades on our disc as well. Star story of the month, the seventh sister, the oldest story in the world. The silver-blue star cluster of the Pleiades, known as the Seven Sisters, sparkles all winter in the night sky, subtle but beautiful. It is located in the constellation Taurus, and you can find it by following the line of Orion's belt up and past Aldebaran and Taurus's. It is located in the constellation Taurus, and you can find it by following the line of Orion's belt up and past Aldebaran, Taurus's brightest star. The Celts associated it with mounting The Celts associated it with mourning and funerals, because at that time it first became visible in the sky at its heliacal rising as Samhain. All over the world, the Pleiades are among the most mythologized of sky objects, and the same theme arises of a man, often Orion the hunter, in his various guises, chasing 7 women, one of whom becomes lost, struck by lightning, hides in shame, transforms into a comet, and so on. In Greek mythology, the Pleiades were the daughters of Atlas, chased across the sky by Orion. All of the sisters married gods, except for Merope, who married the mortal king Sisyphus. And ever hid her face in embarrassment. Who married the mortal king Sisyphus, and forever hid her face in embarrassment. Among indigenous Australians, the myth goes that the 7 sisters were being pursued by Nibiru, or Orion, and one of them was caught and died. Lost Pleiades stories are also told in Native American, African, Indonesian, and Asian cultures. The odd thing here is that, to the naked eye, there are not 7, but 6 stars in the cluster. There are other stars within it, but you would need magnification to see them, and then many more than 7 stars are revealed. A modest telescope will pick out 36, and there are many more. This has been the case for a very long time indeed. In Japan, in ancient times, they were called Mutsuraboshi, 6 stars. Even in a prehistoric cave painting of around 17,000 years old at Lascaux in France, that is thought to depict the cluster, they are represented as 6 stars. The other odd thing is that before colonization, indigenous Australians had little to no contact with the rest of the world for at least 37,000 years. These parallel stories cannot be accounted for by the flow of stories with migrations that have occurred elsewhere. The answer seems to be in the movement of the stars. The Pleiades are not static. The sisters move within their silver-blue gas cloud in relation to each other, very slowly. Astronomers know that the star Merope was once distinct, and so 7 stars were indeed once visible, but it has now moved too close to one of its sister stars to be picked out with the naked eye. The catch, though, is the time scale. Merope was last separate enough to be seen 100,000 years ago. This suggests that the root of the story of the lost sister myth predates the great migration of Homo sapiens out of Africa into Europe, Asia, the Americas, and Australia 60,000 years ago. So, in the night sky, there is myth, there is movement, and we can observe this looking out on nights when it's dark and cold, but even in the cities, the lights surrounding us give off a glow, that same glow that we can keep inside ourselves, inside our intellect, our hearts and spirits, and share it with those close to us. There's much to be seen. In nature, as the nights draw in, tawny owls call out to claim their patch. Around now the younger owls are noisily making themselves known, preparing to set up their territory. These owls will accompany us through these months. Short-eared owls can be found in the UK all year round, but now even more are joining us from Scandinavia, Russia, and Iceland to escape those freezing conditions. They fly in the woodlands and during the day in the wetlands and coastal marshes, hunting for rodents and tasty tidbits. The birds that will stay with us through the winter are house sparrows, blue tits and blackbirds, and of course our ever-present friend robin. Birds that return for the winter from northern climes include siskins, lesser redpolls, and bramblings that all come here to escape colder conditions further north. They will be flocking together and settling in areas where there's a good supply of food, feeding on seeds and nuts, beech nuts being a favorite. They will travel for long distances to find these beech nuts. Also on the move are geese and swans. Many of these big birds travel big distances to be here each autumn, having bred further north. Up to 16,000 whooper swans descend from Iceland, announcing their arrival with lots of noise. Berwick swans are similar but smaller. They make their journey south from Siberia. These birds have black and yellow bills, which can make it hard to tell them apart, but the Berwick's yellow patch seems to be more round. 7 species of geese that also winter in the UK join a few feral species that spend all year here. These include Canada geese, greylag geese, and barnacle geese. Winter visitors include 400,000 pink-footed geese, which breed in Iceland. They have a relatively short neck and a short pink bill, and pink legs. 40% of the entire world population of Atlantic grey seals can be found swimming around Britain's coast. Most of these are in the north and west of the UK, including Cardigan Bay in Wales and the islands of Mull and Iona in Scotland. Staying on the coast, there are piles of seaweed along the strand line, representing a valuable habitat for species such as the turnstone, a chunky wading bird. It has a strong bill and neck adapted to stone turning. Every now and again, the bird flips over a stone or a bit of weed to reveal a sandhopper or some other tasty morsel. Insects, crustaceans, and mollusks. The turnstone nests on Arctic coasts, with much of those wintering on British shores hailing from Greenland and northern Canada. Coming inland, we see some more of the food that these avian friends are attracted to. High in fat, ivy berries are their superfood. These berries appear between October and December. They don't rot as quickly as most fruits, so are a useful food late in the year when supplies of other berries have been exhausted. That's why we have red and green around Christmas time, and the ivy. Before the berries form on the The ivy blossom provides nectar for late-flying butterflies and insects, such as ivy bees and hoverflies. For magic, merlins are scarce and mercurial birds. A merlin falcon has this in mind. You can't really predict when you'll see a merlin. These quicksilver little falcons simply appear. They often give a fleeting glimpse before vanishing into the distance. In winter, however, the odds of sighting a merlin are slightly more. Merlins spend spring and summer in the wildest and most remote upland areas and move lower down after breeding. They can be found on heaths, salt marshes, and arable farmland, with few trees and wide horizons. So over the downs and over the moors, you might see a merlin falcon. They're the tiniest birds of prey in Britain and Ireland. Kestrels are around a third larger with a longer tail. But nonetheless, these merlins are quite good hunters. It is perhaps best to think of them as miniature peregrines, because like peregrines they target birds rather than mammals, and neither hover like the buzzards nor take prey on the ground like the kites. Their signature hunting style is a high-speed aerial pursuit, skimming low over the ground. Between hunts, they perch and scan for prey. Given their modest size, they can often be viewed as little pocket rockets. They go after small quarry like pipits, larks, finches, and buntings. Coming through Britain, but not stopping for long, are migrating redwings. They pass overhead at night. Their little whistles might be confused with that of bats going peep, 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 peep. These contact whistles help the flocks of migrating redwings to keep in touch. They are very high-pitched, and at ground level, it is the effect of hearing something above in the darkness. They come from Iceland, Russia, and Scandinavia, and will be leaving us in March when spring occurs, so they can be our winter friends. Originally from the Indian subcontinent, the parakeet, the green parrot, which is now ubiquitous across southern England, is highly social. They're an emerald green with a red beak and very noisy. They roost communally in tall trees such as poplars and are more prominent in cities from London all the way to Edinburgh and Glasgow in Scotland. Now home to the northernmost free-flying parakeets in the world. These parakeets will return to the same location each evening. These colorful gatherings are largest right about now, just after the breeding season. Soon the pairs will begin to peel off from the main roost and choose a site in a hollow tree in which they sleep. As early as January, some will already have laid their eggs. As for berries, besides the ivy, we have the spindle at this time of year. For most of the year, this small native tree is not much to look at. Easily looks like a hedge or overgrown weed or scrubby woodland, and often goes unnoticed among the more obvious and straightforwardly identified trees such as hawthorn, blackthorn, field maple, and ash. About now, at autumn's peak, however, the spindle comes into its own. The foliage can turn a deep red, but the real attraction is the beautiful fruit. Spindleberries are bubblegum pink, a lipstick shade that seems almost shockingly bright in an autumnal hedgerow. Each berry has 4 lobes which, when ripe, burst open to reveal an orange seed. I'm going to try to put these on our disc, but I don't think I'm doing a very good job of it. Strictly speaking, the real seed is hidden inside. The orange part is a soft covering known as an aril. A few birds, such as blackbirds and robins, adore eating these berries, but they do take care to reject or bring up the poisonous seeds. As the hedgerow leaves are dying back now, the shiny berries of black bryony suddenly become visible as well. They grow in bright red-orange bunches, but they're very poisonous. Black bryony is a climbing vine-like member of the most tropical yam family. But while many yams are important human foods, black bryony is not, and best left alone. Back at the shore, we see on rocks full of seaweeds, just centimeters from all of the foam, as pounding waves crash around them, the purple sandpiper. They are some of the toughest of all shore birds, spending the autumn and winter on Britain Island's most exposed coasts, braving whatever storms throw at them. Breakwaters, piers, and jetties suit them as well, but they will never be on sheltered mudflats or salt marshes, where most other wading birds are. They are in their element amid the foam and spray. Purple sandpipers are really warm gray. Any purplish sheen to their plumage is subtle and noticeable in spring and summer. They spend the spring and summer on tundra and mountains in Iceland, Scandinavia, and across the Arctic, but come down to Britain in small groups, hunting marine snails and other invertebrates among the wet seaweed, flicking over the fronds to find their prey. Another friend for these winter months. Surging rivers in northern Britain, Wales, and Ireland are swollen with autumn rain and witness one of our greatest wildlife dramas. These rising water levels are a cue for Atlantic salmon to move upstream between September and December, the penultimate stage in an odyssey whose climax will be spawning. Around now, we can see the numbers of duck species swell dramatically in Britain as migrants flock here to the wetlands to escape the harsher winters of the Baltic, Scandinavia, and Russia and Iceland. These visitors include, among others, widgeon and potsherds, small ducks with beautiful colors. The first full moon in November often coincides with an influx of the nocturnal waders. Studies have shown that some of these visit Britain from as far away as Siberia and always stay faithful to the same wintering sites. These waders are worm eaters, and they forage in boggy clearings and damp pasture and moorland next to the woods. Some of our small mammals that will be hibernating or even half hibernating include hedgehogs, who are prompted by the longer nights, falling temperatures, and waning food supplies. Those not hibernating are among rabbits and hares. They'll lie up in cover by day and venture out in the evening to feed, having a surprisingly wide diet, especially at this time of year, which can include twigs and bark. On the forest floor and at the edges of the woods we see ferns. Ferns stay green all year long, but often mistaken for ferns is bracken, which dies back in autumn, turning the woodland clearings and floors, commons and hillsides into a sea of yellow and burnished copper brown. The lattice work of these bracken fronds looks atmospheric and glistens in the first frosts. Dry bracken was once widely harvested as bedding for livestock and as kindling for fire. Two trees we'll look at this season are beech and ash. Beech, we know, is a favorite for some birds. Ash is a tree that comes into leaf late and drops its foliage very early in the autumn, often when the leaves are still green or only just turning yellow. It has little fruits flattened into wings that ripen to a coppery color. They hang in big bunches known as keys, and these attract bullfinches that will peck and extract the seeds from inside. When these fall, wood mice are quick to gather them. Let's have a look at beech. Beech trees form deep, shady woods, for their thick leaves create layer upon layer of canopy, which screens out the light. Thrives on chalky ground and improves the fertility of the soil, shows its beauty in all seasons. Copper beech, with its beautifully colored leaves, originates from Germany and has become a favorite garden or park tree in many parts of Europe. Regarded as the mother of the woods, it is protective and nurturing, giving shade with its canopy and food that can be eaten in its raw state. As a large tree of the broadleaf forest, it is also known as the beech queen, who stands beside the oak king. Here we have a myriad of legends associated with beech from Greece and the European continent. It says that ancient Greek legend tells us that Jason used beech trees in the building of his ship, the Argo, in preference to oak, and that Helen of Troy, like many another lover throughout history, reputedly carved her and her lover's names upon the trunk of a beech tree. Here we have an interesting linguistic connection as well. On a material level, we are told that thin slices of beech wood not only formed the first book as distinct from a scroll, but were also first prepared surface upon which words were written. This would seem corroborated by the etymology. The Anglo-Saxon beech was bock, which became book, and in modern German we have Buch. Later becoming Bock, modern German Buch. And beech in Swedish is also bock, meaning both beech and book. Books and scrolls are full of words, and in all ancient religions the god of learning, or master of words, was mighty. In early Egypt, Thoth was scribe and messenger of the gods, and measurer of time, and a great mathematician. In Greece, Hermes was the god of writing and all its attributes. Then we have Hermes Trismegistos, the medieval alchemist. Or the god related to medieval alchemy, used by medieval alchemists. So here we can see this relation between words and writing, legend, and even power and magic. Here we have Irish legend. Ogma, the leading warrior of the Tuatha De Danann, was credited with inventing the Ogham alphabet, which was named after him. Originally, this alphabet was used only for inscriptions, and there was druidic discouragement on the writing down of knowledge. But eventually, through such vehicles as the Coligny calendar, became more widely used. The attributes of Ogma became mixed with those of the Celtic god Ogmos, who represented by having the sun radiating out from his face. And we have many examples of this sort of thing in manuscript illustrations and also in carvings and etchings. Here we also have Northern European beech legends. In Northern Europe, Odin was credited with the first utterance of the runic system, used for communication and divination. These great gods, with their invention of the art of writing, were seen as benefactors to the human race, for they not only revealed ancient knowledge, but also gave ways to make that knowledge solid and tangible as marks upon a surface, thus preserving its wisdom for generations of the future. Whatever the word was written upon, be it wood, stone, or hide, became imbued with the mightiness of the gods and the magic that they and their writing possessed. So beech received such reverence. beech is one of our most beautiful trees. To stand within a grove of beech is to experience a magical grace which radiates from the trees themselves and the way they transform the air. This helps our senses to open, allowing us to perceive the elemental world of nature. The ethereal atmosphere is made all the more intense by the tree's sensitivity to light, and its habit of using its branches and foliage to screen out any harshness. It brings a certain awe to humans that has moved artists and poets throughout time with its spirituality and inspiration. This sensation is felt as a sort of breathlessness as your being stills and you become quiet yet ever watchful, aware of the magic that is nature. Next, we go together to Arundel Castle in an eponymous village in Sussex. Here we see the south of England, where the Romans landed along the south coast, from Brighton past Chichester, above which are the Sussex Downs. We can see Arundel here near the coast, overlooking the south towards the Channel, whence come ships and trade, and north towards London, stretching far into the northern parts of the biggest island of Great Britain. Arundel sits in its little river valley, where it can bask in sunshine or be ensconced in swirling fog and mist along the river. I promised you magic and stories, so let this be our place for the November disc. The name Arundel comes from the Old English Harhunedel, meaning Valley of the Horehound, a type of sweet mint that grows in the area, and was first recorded in the Domesday Book. Folk etymology, however, connects the name Arundel with Old French Arundel, or, which is in modern French, Hirondelle, meaning swallow, and indeed swallows appear on the town's coat of arms. The Domesday Book was a detailed survey of land holdings and resources in England in 1086. It is one of the most important historical records ever made. Commissioned by William I, or William the Conqueror, in England in winter 1085. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle states that in 1085 the king sent his agents to survey every shire in England, to list his holdings and dues owed him. The survey's main purpose was to record the annual value of every piece of landed property to its lord, and the resources in land, labour force, and livestock from which the value derived. The survey provided the king with information on potential sources of funds when he needed to raise money. It includes sources of income, but not expenses, such as castles, unless they needed to be included to explain discrepancies between pre- and post-conquest holdings of certain individuals. Typically, this would happen in a town where separately recorded properties had been demolished to make way for a castle. This was indeed a shrewd political stroke by William, one that he deemed necessary to consolidate his power as lord over all England. For our purposes, we can look in the Domesday Book to see what the land in Sussex was like prior to Arundel Castle, as the castle itself derives from a Norman motte and whip bailey construction, so does not seem to predate the book. The Domesday manuscript itself was originally known by the Latin name Liber de Wintonia, meaning the Book of Winchester, where it was originally kept in the royal treasury. It is written in medieval Latin with a few Saxon or Briton terms and is highly abbreviated. It is now held at the National Archives in Kew, London. Here we can see the land of Earl Roger of Shrewsbury. Households, 4 burgesses. Land and resources, 1 mill, value £14. 1 fishery. Valuation, annual value to Lord, £27 in 1086, £4 in 1066. That gives us some information about Roger of Shrewsbury and what he was collecting. Owners, Tenant-in-Chief in 1086, Earl Roger of Shrewsbury. Lords in 1086, Arnold, Church of St. Nicholas, Morin, Nigel, Ralph of Bigner, Robert, son of Theobald, Earl Roger of Shrewsbury, and seats the Abbey of St. Martin, and someone named William. Lord in 1066 was King Edward, and by this we know it was Edward the Confessor, whose death prompted Harold to have to defend his holding at the Stamford Bridge battle, and then again when William came across the Channel. What was the Earl of Shrewsbury title? Well, the first creation of this title was in 1074 for Roger de Montgomery, one of William the Conqueror's principal councillors. So what we have in Domesday shows that this land was first in the hands of King Edward the Confessor, and then we have this Earl Roger of Shrewsbury. Who, in fact, is this Roger, and what is this title, Earl of Shrewsbury? This title was created in 1074 for Roger de Montgomery, or the Roger of Shrewsbury. He was one of William the Conqueror's principal councillors, and one of the Marcher Lords, that is, with the Earl of Hereford and the Earl of Chester forming a bulwark against Wales, and thus he was granted great power. His territory extended from Shropshire, of which Shrewsbury is the county town, into mid-Wales, the county of Montgomeryshire being named after him. All of this was outside the ordinary administration, so he was also granted lands across England. On Roger's death, his eldest son, Robert of Bellême, succeeded his lands in Normandy, and his younger son received his lands in England, as well as the title of Earl of Shrewsbury. On Hugh's death in 1098, the earldom passed to his elder brother, Robert of Bellême, and he became the third Earl of Shrewsbury. This title was forfeit in 1102 after Robert rebelled against Henry I and joined Robert Curthos's invasion of England in 1101. So what do we know of this Roger de Montgomery, and what about the title after 1102? Well, Roger de Montgomery, who died in 1094, was also known as Roger the Great and cousin to William the Conqueror. We know he was the first Earl of Shrewsbury, and the Earl of Arundel was also a title he held. His father was Roger de Montgomery, Seigneur de Montgomery, Vicomte of Émois. We do not know much about his father's life, except that he was possibly a grandnephew of Duke Richard I of Normandy, the great-grandfather of William the Conqueror. He had extensive holdings in Normandy, chiefly in the valley of the river Dives, which our Roger de Montgomery and later his son Robert inherited. Roger, the son, inherited his father's estates in 1055. By the time of the Council of Lillebonne, in about January of 1066, he had become one of William the Conqueror's principal councillors and played a major role in the council. He may not have fought in the initial invasion of England in 1066. Instead, he stayed behind to help govern Normandy. However, he contributed 60 ships to Duke William's invasion force. You might remember we looked at William Wass's The Romain de Rue some time back here in the study. Well, Wass, in his account, has Roger commanding the Norman right flank at Hastings, returning to Normandy with King William in 1067. Afterward, was entrusted with land in two regions critical for the defence of the Kingdom of England, the Welsh March and the Valley in Sussex. At the end of 1067, or perhaps early in 1068, William gave Roger nearly all of what is now the county of West Sussex, a total of 83 manors, which at the time of the Domesday Survey was an area known as the Rape of Arundel. The traditional subdivisions unique to the historic county of Sussex. Rape comes from the Old English rape, or rope, possibly alluding to the ropes that would demark land holdings at one time. About 1071, Roger was granted estates in Shropshire, which amounted to some 7/8 of the whole country. He was also then made Earl of Shrewsbury, and in 1083 Roger founded Shrewsbury Abbey. He was one of the half-dozen greatest magnates in England during William the Conqueror's reign, and a very wealthy man as a result. The Rape of Arundel was eventually split into two rapes, one keeping the name of Arundel, the other being called the Rape of Chichester. It was in 1067, in Arundel, overlooking the river Arun, that he began work on the motte and bailey structure that would become the castle. Besides his estates in Sussex and Shropshire, Roger had others. In Surrey, 4 manors, 9 manors in Hampshire, 3 manors in Wiltshire, 8 in Middlesex, 1 in Gloucestershire, 2 in Worcestershire, 8 in Cambridgeshire, 11 in Warwickshire, and 30 in Staffordshire. The income from Roger's estates amounted to about £2,000 per year, which then was about almost 3% of the nation's GDP. After William's death in 1087, however, his reputation would take a turn. Roger joined with other rebels to overthrow the newly crowned king, William Rufus, in the rebellion of 1088. William, though, was able to convince Roger to abandon the rebellion and side with him. This worked out favorably for Roger, as the rebels were beaten and lost their landholdings in England. A rather complex and varied life was led by the third Earl, Roger's son, Robert, much vilified in Odoric Vitalis' account of his cruelty and viciousness. Robert eventually died in prison after his many involvements in rebellions and wars, vying for the throne and for power. Suffice it to note that the title of Earl of Shrewsbury was forfeit in 1102, after Robert rebelled against Henry I and joined Robert Courthouse's invasion of England in 1101. It was because of this rebellion that between 1101 and 1102 Arundel Castle was besieged by the forces of Henry after its holder rebelled. The siege ended with the castle surrendering to the king. When the castle had been passed to Adelise of Louvain, the widow of Henry I, and her husband William d'Aubigny, the Empress Matilda, daughter of Henry I, stayed on in the castle in 1139. And what of the Arundel title? Earl of Arundel reappears in the 12th century. Henry I granted this to his second wife, Adelise of Louvain. After Henry's death, she married William d'Aubigny, the first Earl of the d'Aubigny family of Saint-Martin-d'Aubigny in Normandy. It was William who built the stone shell keep on the motte, and who, from 1141, is variously styled Earl of Sussex, of Chichester, or of Arundel. His first known appearance as an earl is at Christmas 1141. Earl of Arundel remains one of the oldest extant in the English peerage. It is currently held by the Duke of Norfolk, and is used by his heir apparent as a courtesy title. Until the mid-13th century, the earls were also frequently known as Earl of Sussex, until this title fell into disuse. The earldom fell to the originally Breton Fitz-Alain family, a younger patrilineal branch of which went on to become the Stuart family that would rule Scotland and England. A tradition arose that the holder of Arundel Castle should automatically be Earl of Arundel, and this was formally confirmed by Henry VI in the 15th century. In 1580, the 12th Earl and last Fitz-Alain to hold the title died without a male heir. His daughter, Mary Fitz-Alain, had married the attainted 4th Duke of Norfolk, and the title passed to their son, Philip Howard, before he, too, was attainted for treason in 1589. During the reign of Elizabeth I, he was charged with being a Roman Catholic, quitting England without leave, and sharing in Jesuit plots. For this, he was sent to the Tower of London in 1585. Howard spent 10 years in the Tower until his death from dysentery. One might be inclined to think that there was some ancient Saxon or even Briton bad luck connected with the holding of this land, or that those holding it seemed inclined to treasonous designs, however legitimately presumed they might have been. Eventually, the earldom of Arundel was restored to Philip Howard's son, Thomas, following the accession of King James I and VI in 1603. The fifth Earl of Arundel was restored to the principal Howard title of Duke of Norfolk in 1660, and the title has descended with that dukedom ever since. In 1842, by royal warrant, Henry Fitzalan Howard, 14th Duke of Norfolk and 13th Earl of Arundel, and his siblings assumed the surname Fitzalan Howard, used by the family line today. The magnificent Arundel Castle still stands today, overlooking the town, founded on Christmas Day, 1067. This sprawling structure spans Norman architecture, Victorian grandeur, and beautiful gardens. Many events are hosted here, from medieval jousting tournaments to theatrical performances and flower festivals. Charles Howard, 11th Duke of Norfolk, was known for his restoration work after a fire destroyed part of the castle, and also improvements to the castle beginning in 1787. As part of these works, the folly that stands on the hill above Swanbourne Lake was commissioned by and built for the Duke by Francis Horne. In 1846, Queen Victoria and her husband Prince Albert came from Osborne House on the Isle of Wight for a 3-day visit, and was entertained by Henry Charles, 13th Earl of Arundel. For the august occasion, a bedroom and library with furniture was commissioned by a leading London architectural firm named Morant. The work included a suite of 6 rooms, built on the 2nd floor of the southeast range. Arundel Castle is home of several ghosts as well. One is said to be the spirit of a small boy who is thought to have worked in the kitchens around 200 years ago. It is believed that his master used to beat him, one day so severely that the poor boy died. His ghost has been heard scurrying around the kitchen, feverishly scrubbing the pots and pans. Another ghost comes in the apparition of a man who appears in the library wearing clothing of the Restoration era under Charles II, and has become known as the Blue Man because he is dressed in blue silk. He appears to be searching through or reading the books, although it is never the same book, and he only stays for a minute or two before disappearing. He has been seen since 1630, and perhaps he is searching for some lost piece of information, an inventory or a will. Perhaps we will see him in our magical library in the study one day. Another library ghost is a little black dog that belonged to St. Philip Howard, the one who lost the title and died in the Tower. During the 11 years he spent in the Tower, he was accompanied by this dog. Philip died in 1595 and was canonized by Pope Paul VI in 1970 as one of the 40 martyrs of England and Wales. Purportedly, only children have reported seeing this little black dog wandering around the library. Perhaps he's looking for his master. The last bit we have about Arundel is more tenuous, perhaps the most tenuous bit we have. Some have said that in the Vulgate Merlin, the Merlin, which seems to place Arundel in Wales, says that it was the site of a crucial battle between the kings in the rebellion against none other than King Arthur, led by King Tradelmant of North Wales, and the Saxons. The Saxons were routed and fled to Saxon Rock. A second battle at Arundel involving King Ydir and Yvain and Gawain against the Saxons resulted in a defeat. Merlin, however, warned Gawain to withdraw his forces from the field in time, and thus Gawain managed to save the castle and fortify it with a garrison. And so, my friend, we finish our November Almanac disc for the study. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you're warm and cozy, and you have beautiful dreams. Be good to yourself, be kind to others, and as always, be extraordinary.